Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to this talk. It's the second about the precious human existence, and in the overall series on the four common foundations, the four ways of changing the mind, it is the fifth video. In the previous one, we saw what it is that defines what is called a precious human existence. There were the 21 factors that Gampopa describes, that's the main definition. We also looked at some of the 16 factors we find in Patrul Rinpoche's Words of My Perfect Teacher. But then, once we know what it is, then we have some 4 or 5 key points about which we do need to reflect. How rare it is, how precious, how fragile a thing it is, and how it's the result of something wonderful in the past, and then how we need to put it to great use. The first of these is about its rarity. As we saw last time, one of the problems is that we just grew up very used to ourselves. And we don't have this objective view of where we sit in the scheme of things. We can't see ourselves as a Buddha would see us, as an amazing potential, and in this point, as something so rare. It's very hard, because we're so used to ourselves, to think that regular old me is an amazingly rare and precious feature in this cosmos. Of course, this is something that's been picked up now quite a lot in fantasy films, where you have the chosen one, somehow a very ordinary person, even a hobbit, can become the one upon whom so much depends. Well, it's maybe not quite in that sense, but one very, very important point is to realize that for whatever reasons, your life today, right now, is one of the rarest and most wonderful things in the entire cosmos. That's one of the reasons we thought about all of the states that we are not, the 8 unfavorable states. And we considered our positive assets. The very great teacher, the previous Kalu Rinpoche, would say, just stop and think. In your house, in your street, how many people have the connection with Dharma you have? The access to Dharma, the heart that responds. And then, not just in your street, in your area, in your town, in your country. Are you 1 in 10? Are you 1 in 100 who could really practice the Dharma? Are you 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000? And that's just amongst the human beings. As you heard last time, there are all of the animals and all of the beings we can't see. So what the Buddha does is to give us a vivid example to help us appreciate just how rare a precious human existence is. He says, imagine a turtle, a blind turtle, and somehow this turtle spends most of its life underwater in a vast ocean. And it comes up to the surface just once every 100 years. Somewhere, floating on the surface of that same ocean, is a wooden ring, perhaps the yoke from an oxen that one day fell into the ocean and has been washing around ever since. So the Buddha says the rarity of your present precious human existence would be like the Rarity of the amazing coincidence of this turtle that comes up once every 100 years, putting its neck, when it comes up, through the ring, through the wooden ring. It's blind, it can't do it on purpose. It's underwater, it doesn't even know this thing's floating. Of course, the odds against that are amazing. One would need to wait thousands, millions of years, assuming the turtle lived that long, for it to happen. But the Buddha says this is how rare your precious human existence is. Now, of course, this is stunning. It sounds quite over the top. So we need to think about it. Just to think about it. Go back to all those contemplations and to realize that actually it's the case. He gives another example of all of the stars that we see at night time. And of course you need to imagine not our modern world with its light pollution, but the plains of Tibet or places like the desert where you see trillions of stars every night. So he says if those trillions of stars were all the different sentient beings, then the ones with a precious human existence are as rare as those very, very few stars that can be seen sometimes in the daytime. That's how rare it is. So we think about this again and again. Not only is it rare, it is something very, well, what's the word we can use? Precious. It's the same word, ratna, in Sanskrit, that we use for the 3 jewels, the 3 refuges. It has 5 or 6 meanings in Sanskrit. That's why it's hard to give it one meaning. One, like we just heard, is something very rare, so like a very pure diamond or jewel. It's very, very rarely encountered, and to encounter it is something extraordinary. Like, imagine you find a large, pure diamond or emerald or sapphire. An extraordinary thing. Not only is it rare, it is something which is powerful. So if you found such a jewel, instead of maybe having to work for 40 years, working every day of your life in order to survive, if you found a diamond that large, then you wouldn't need to do that. That is powerful. Ratna also means something very pure. And indeed, the reason that such a diamond would be rare and powerful would be because of its purity, its flawlessness. So somehow, even though you may not feel it, when you consider there is something very pure happening in our life, that we've made this connection with Dharma, and that potential, that possibility is there. It takes a lot for that to happen. Another meaning of Ratna is something noble, something innately good. So again, like gold or like a diamond, there is an innate goodness and purity, an innate value in the thing. So we think about this preciousness, such a rare, precious thing. Like of all the rocks and the stones, millions and millions of them, to come across that pure emerald, that pure diamond. Such a rare thing. And that's what this life is. And then, thirdly, once we've realized what an amazingly rare and precious thing it is, then we remind ourselves of what a fragile thing it is. This human life depends on our body. It can get sick, it can die, for all sorts of reasons. Nobody knows when they're going to die. Very few people know how they'll die, what are the cause of their death. All we know is that we are alive today as very precious human beings. And tomorrow we have no idea. And one very famous quote says, "You don't know which comes first, tomorrow or the next life." Unfortunately, that's very true. So, of course, we need to use this potential today and not put it off until tomorrow or next year or later on, because later on might never happen. A fourth thing that we contemplate, and as with all the others, we give this day after day, we come back to it and really focus one-pointingly, meaningfully on it, is on the cause for us having at present this precious human existence. The cause is in the past. It's in our past lives. We must have done something very wonderful, or a lot of good things, made good prayers, good promises. We've been here before, and all of that goodness we've made before has matured in this life to give us this opportunity. But this is it. It's not as though automatically we'll get this opportunity again next life and again the next life. It's the result of such a huge investment. When I was a boy, as they say, when I was young, people only had 2 weeks annual holiday. They worked 50 weeks of the year for their 2 weeks holiday. And when you're on holiday, that's it. That is the time to really enjoy yourself and make the most of it, because then you've got to go and work 50 more weeks before you get another one. Fortunately, these days, people get more holidays. But when one considers all of the good karma, everything in the past that went into giving you this precious human existence that you have now, today, then one realizes that this is it, and unless we use this now to do exactly what we did before, to make a huge wave of goodness, to turn our mind to the truth, to wake up as human beings, to assume our role in the whole scheme of things, to become responsible, a shining light of goodness, of truth. Unless we do that, then we'll be like somebody who's just burnt up their savings pretty uselessly. It may be a very, very long time indeed before we get such an opportunity, because just now we have the karma, and just now Dharma is in the world. It's pretty intact. It's very, very good. The quality is still high. But in the future, that might not be the case. Even though you may be reborn human, you may just be ticking along, leading a good human life, but without this possibility of incredible progress. The reason for a future precious human existence is to have created a great stock of wisdom and merit in this life. So we think about that. We think about that. And then the fifth point is about making the most use of it. That's the last of the point. It's really the conclusion of all of these contemplations as you come to the end of your schedule of reflections about the precious human existence. That is really what it's all about. Having realized you are a precious human being, that it's rare, that it is precious, that it comes from very special causes, and that it's very fragile, then by that time you should be longing from deep within you to use it to the best. And the scriptures give us 3 examples. They say use it like a boat, like a steed, or like a servant. Let's take the last of those. It's like the relationship between a master and a servant. Maybe that's not very politically correct these days, but it's an example, and it's an example we can understand. The boss is the boss, the servant's the servant, and we shouldn't get them mixed up. So this body, this life with its senses, can sometimes be very drawn into its physicality, what its senses like. Food, things to see, things to touch, sensorial pleasure. Sometimes the servant can become the master. And then a whole life goes by, and the kit that you are, your ability to think, to understand, gets lost in what is relatively trivial, which bears no long-term fruit. What you talk about with others, what you think about, where your interest is employed, learning. In the end, it may be useless learning. Sorry, but it can often be like that. We can know so many useless things. Or it can be useful learning. So we use our intelligence, our senses, our ability to observe everything that we are. We think of it like a servant, and the master is our own longing and determination to make this life a most exceptional life, one that will shape all of our future lives and bring beauty and meaning again and again and again. Benefit for ourselves, benefit for everyone. To do maybe what ought to have been done ages ago, but in this life, at least, no matter what happened before, now one can do it. That's the boss. And all of the rest is the servant. And we use it as a servant, and we make it work hard for its wages, for its moments of rest and pleasure, which it needs too. Servants need holidays. The second thing is like a boat. And very often you've probably seen this example of samsara, suffering, being like an ocean. And that what we're looking for is the shore, dry land, where there is food, fresh water, comfort, rest, and not the constantly moving sea. So the boat is what can help you get to that far shore. But then if we just let the boat drift, there's no telling where the tides and the currents are going to take it. We need to row the boat or to set the sails very correctly so it takes us where we want to go, and not to get too lost decorating the boat and doing all sorts of things, but not really keeping it on course. So day after day, as we think about precious human existence, we try to keep it on course, taking us where we want to go, not just carried with the current. And the third example is that of the steed. And as I mentioned in one of the previous videos, in those old days, a horse was as fast as it got. It was the most elegant, fantastic form of transport. It took you where you wanted to go on land, as fast as you could go. Of course, you need to look after your horse. But then, in those old days when there were staging posts, sometimes you changed horse and you changed horse. And that's what we'll do. We'll have this life, you'll have another life, and another life, and another life. And in each life, you won't remember the past life. Like just now, you probably don't remember your past life. But whatever good you did, however much you helped yourself progress, you'll pick that up next time. And then you'll pick that up next time. So you'll be on your journey to freedom, to wisdom, to happiness, all those good things. So we treat this body, this mind, like a horse that we are riding. More generally, when we think about using this precious human existence, we also think about a teaching given by Gampopa, given by Atisha, these great masters who brought Buddhism to Tibet, called the 3 types of precious human being. This is one of the most useful teachings you'll ever find. It really makes a lot about Buddhism clear. It helps us understand so much. And if you've been to my courses in Samiling or even watched some of the other series of YouTube videos, you'll know it's a topic I use a lot because Gampopa and Atisha used it a lot. So I'll mention it briefly here, and I think I'll do just one short video for YouTube in this series to say a few more words about it if it's not a familiar topic. So to put it briefly, there are 3 types of precious human being, 3 levels. When we look at the Buddha's teachings, we see these are the 3 types of people he's teaching. And because they are different, their intentions different, their interests are different, their capacity is different, he gives them different teachings. It helps us understand why there is so much teaching in Buddhism, because it suits those different ones. The first type of Buddhist is one who is not yet really longing for liberation, not longing to become a Buddha, but they very definitely don't want to suffer. They like life. What they really want is, in this life and in their future lives, to have the good things. Friendship, good health, long life, wealth, to live in a place which is secure, not at war, where the environment is friendly, the crops are good, and so on. All of those good things of life. And to those, the Buddha teaches karma, cause and effect, because that's the information that we humans are missing. How what we do in one life shapes our destiny in the next life. So the first type of Buddhist believes in karma. They believe in rebirth. And they're trying their very best to lead good, decent lives, lives based on the path of peace, respect for other life, and in particular on the practice of generosity, where we live in a way that is basically caring for each other, given to each other. That's the first type of Buddhist. A second type of Buddhist has tired of being reborn and being reborn and being reborn, and of their happiness always depending on something other. Depends on what other people do, depends on the weather, depends on wealth or poverty, depends on your body, health and sickness, depends on karma. They want to get out of rebirth and the power of karma, and they believe and they learn through the Buddha's teaching that an eternal sort of peace is possible, a lasting happiness that does not depend on other, but that naturally is to be found in the mind. They long for liberation. Liberation is the key word here. And in order to attain it, they do renounce very much. They need to cut off their ties, their attachments. And they want to cut off their ties and attachments because they realize that's what's keeping them in the whole karmic system. The path of renunciation, The practice of intense shamatha meditation, concentration meditation, is the main path the Buddha teaches to them. That's your second type of precious human being. The third type, very moved not just by their own suffering through dependence, but the suffering of all sentient beings, does not just want liberation from karma and rebirth. They want to become like the Buddha, someone who helps everyone find peace, happiness and liberation. We call this third type the Bodhisattva, and their path is one of training in love, kindness, compassion, and beside the shamatha, which frees the mind, a very extensive training in an understanding of voidness and the nature of the mind, the nature of perception and consciousness. All three are precious human beings. All three are very beneficial. Sometimes you or I find we belong to one or another of these three categories. Sometimes, if you're like me, you'll find that, in fact, all three types of Buddhist are inside you. Sometimes you're very attached to life, you want to carry on existing, you want to be. Sometimes you're sick and fed up with it, you long for the lasting peace of mind, you want not to be. And sometimes you are so moved by love and compassion, you long to become a Buddha and help everyone. And the teachings address all three areas inside us. But all three of them are very wonderful, they're very precious, because it means that somebody is using their life very positively. They're not just sinking down to the lowest common denominator, they are putting in the effort to make their life a good and a useful one. That's it for this particular talk. I hope you enjoy and value your contemplations on the precious human existence. Speak soon. Bye-bye.